Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where today I'm going to be talking about my 5 most and least favorite eyeshadow palettes that I've tried in 2022. If you are new here, hello, my name is Rachel. I am a homeschooling stay-at-home mom and I love to play with colorful eyeshadow. I upload many videos every week. It's all eyeshadow related content. If you like what you see, you want to see more, remember to like and subscribe before you go because, again, lots of videos. So a couple of thoughts before I launch into this video. First off, I did not film today's eye look because this is actually an eye look that I saw at least 2 other creators do. Angelica Nyqvist did it, and I think Katie Marie did it as well. I will link their videos down below. You can just follow their tutorials if you want to see it. It's using the Merry Christmas palette from Oden's Eye. I've been working with that palette all week because I'm currently filming my week of Merry Christmas series, and I've been having so much fun with them, and I really wanted to recreate this look, but I didn't feel that it needed to be filmed because other people already did that. Anyway, down below in the description box, you can find the links to their tutorials. Angie's is exactly the same, and Katie's might be slightly different, but I think she used pretty much the same colors. Besides that, the palettes that I'm going to be talking about in today's video, I did go back through my YouTube playlist. I've been doing eyeshadow for almost 2 years or maybe a year and a half. I forget what my timeline is at this point. I know that somewhere earlier in the year I did a, 1 year into eyeshadow. So maybe it's more like a year and a half or year and 3/4. Most of the palettes in my collection have been purchased this year. Most of them have been purchased secondhand, so a lot of them are not new releases. If I can find links for these palettes that I'm mentioning today, I will put those links in the description box as well in case you're interested, but some of them are definitely discontinued because I tend to buy secondhand. But I'll do what I can as far as providing you guys with some links. And I do also want to mention that anything I say in this video is personal preference. If you love something that I don't love, that's okay, because different brands are marketing with different formulas and different color stories to people with different tastes and preferences. You might like something that I don't like, I might like something that you don't like. It's fine. This video, these ranking videos are fully 100% preference based, so please don't take anything personally. I'm going to start with Ace Beauté. Now, Ace Beauté a while back launched a bunch of palettes and they were received rather poorly in the community in general. People said that the mattes weren't that great, the shimmers were thin, the pigments weren't very buildable or blendable, they just weren't very good. The whole Paradise collection as well as Oceanic and Flare and a couple others, people were saying they weren't great. So Ace Beauté, to their credit, they reformulated and relaunched a lot, if not all, of their palettes. And so the first one that I want to talk about is the Flare palette. Now, this is actually the old formula, but I have said so many times, I love this palette. This is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. I think the color story is so interesting and creative. I think it's beautiful. I love the different tones. I love how we've got some kind of expected colors, red and orange, that's sort of the theme, and look at the packaging, of course, reddy, orangey, vermilion, blood orange, all those sorts of tones. Then we've got some brown and some green and some yellow that go with those tones. And all of that is beautiful, but also sort of expected. But then out of the blue, we have a row of purples, and this is a very gray-based, lilac-y sort of purple. This is a purpley cream sort of shimmer. It's interesting. And then we've got some blues, which ordinarily would work nicely with the green and yellow, but it's not as common to see blues with the harvest tones. And then we've got a sky blue here that's a shimmer. It's just, oh, okay. And then over here, this is acid green, yellow. I think it's very interesting. I get a ton of ideas when I opened up this palette. And even though this is Ace Beauté's old formula, maybe it's not as good as their new stuff, but I still really, really enjoy and get a lot of use out of this palette. Now I want to contrast that with the Paradise Fallen palette, which I had and I decluttered. Now the one that I had was the new formula, and this is why it's so surprising to me. I had Paradise Fallen in their new formula and I wasn't actually that impressed by it. I know everybody's saying that the reformulation was amazing. Angelica Nyqvist says that Ace Beauté has one of her absolute favorite eyeshadow formulas, but my experience with their new formula hasn't actually been that impressive. I don't know. I had the Paradise Fallen palette, I had it in the new formula, and I really liked the color story of that palette. I really liked the cool toned purples paired with the silvery tones. I thought it was very pretty. I have brown eyes, and brown eyes look really good with purple eyeshadow. It's one of the best colors on a brown eye. And I still didn't find that palette very exciting. And when it came down to performance, I felt like the shimmers in the new formula still didn't impress me any more than the shimmers in the old formula. And I'm like, okay, well, why are we paying more if the shimmers aren't any better, especially these days when brands are launching amazing shimmers? And I know that Ace Beauté recently launched a couple of new palettes and the shimmers look incredible. So I don't know if they've upgraded their formula from there, or if maybe the Paradise Fallen palette just, I don't know, just wasn't great. So I had that one. I was really excited about it. I used it a couple times and I was just unenthused. I ended up decluttering it. I do want to eventually end this video on a positive note, so I don't want to start with the palette that I like most and then end with the one that I liked least. So I'm going to reverse my order at this point. The reason I started with Flare first was because I owned the old formula and I was contrasting it to the new formula, which I didn't like as much. Anyway, we're going to reverse now and go into another purple palette. This one is the All Amethyst from ColourPop. Now, I'm pretty sure that I included this in a video where I talked about if I could only keep 10 palettes. This one, surprisingly, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, made the cut. And it actually surprised some of you guys, my subscribers, who knew very well that I had given this palette quite mixed reviews. But the reason it was included in that video was because overall color story and what each palette would bring and how I could get the most variety out of just choosing 10 palettes, this one offered something at the time. If I were to remake that video now, I would have chosen different palettes because now I have other palettes in my collection. But anyway, here's the All Amethyst palette from ColourPop. You know very well, I say it all the time, I love the packaging, I love the color story, I love this, again, cool tone purples. Now, I had already seen a couple of less than optimistic reviews on this palette. Some people were saying that the pans were really hard pressed. Other people were saying that it just wasn't terribly impressive ColourPop quality. And so I had mixed expectations when I got it, but I was hoping that I would love it. So my opinion of this palette is that the shimmers are beautiful, they're unique, they're different, they're interesting shimmers, you know? And this matte and this sequin shade here are both so beautiful. This one gives me a lovely pink wash of color, and this one gives me a beautiful lavender lilac wash of color. But the three shades over here, all of which are more medium toned, not even that deep, are not very good. They're just not great. So this palette is one that ultimately has ended up disappointing me. I think that given some new palettes which are going to be entering my collection in the near future, I may end up passing this one along. It's not that it's bad, it's just I want every shade in a palette to be exciting to me. And when I find a palette that has very few shades to begin with, and some of them just don't perform the way that I'm expecting, especially with ColourPop, because ordinarily I would say ColourPop mattes are a little stronger than their shimmers. In this palette, it's the opposite, and I like a more matte heavy look with just a little pop of shimmer. Now let's compare that to not another purple palette, but a palette that I think is amazing. There's no order in this video, it's just good palette, bad palette. Liked this one, didn't like this one. I'm going to talk about the Hela palette from Oden and Angelica Nyqvist. I think that this palette, you all know, is amazing. It's one of my favorite all round. Obviously, that's why it's featured in this video. It's also one of my favorite Oden palettes, and Oden is my favorite brand. I think that this palette is so beautifully done. The color story is varied and unique, and it has some interest to it. It's not just yellowy greens, it's not just pinky purples, it's a little of both. We've got warm toned, we've got cool toned, we've got grungy, we've got some neutrals. You've got this shade right here that's a lovely like sparkly black. This one over here is a multi-chrome. It can also be used as a beautiful face highlighter. It's an amazing palette, and green is probably my favorite eyeshadow color to play with. So even though a couple of these greens are not the best on my skin with the deeper more warm or yellowy or grungy undertones, I can still use them to blend out colors that work a little bit better on me, and I can still get some super beautiful looks with this palette. Another palette for which I had high expectations but was ultimately disappointed is the Do Not Disturb palette from BH Cosmetics. Now, I have heard people still raving about how great the formula is in this palette. I have to say I just don't get it. BH Cosmetics at the point of this release had been launching so many amazing palettes with fabulous quality, and when I got this palette I was really excited because I liked the color story a lot. I really liked that blue and berry sort of combination. I thought it was very well done. The palette went light to dark, it had inner corner highlights. I thought it could have been the whole package, except for the actual packaging. But anyway, when I used the palette, I did get a couple of very beautiful looks from it. My qualm with this palette was that the shimmers were not what I was expecting. A couple of them were more topper shades, and I don't really use topper shades, honestly. Maybe it's just personal preference. If I put down a shimmer, I want it to be kind of a focal point. Like, here you go. This is like that exciting sparkly part of the look. I feel like topper shades are just less exciting, less interesting. While the mattes were exceptional, the shimmers were not what I was expecting based on all of the palettes I'd had up to that point from BH Cosmetics, the travel series, the brunch series. The shimmers in this palette were just very different. And I was surprised and quite disappointed because I wanted to love that palette, and I ended up decluttering it not too long after getting it. Now, if we want to talk about another small palette, that was a 9 pan. This one is a 6 pan. This is the Colored Rain Queen Bee palette. This is quite new to my collection. And if we want to talk about shimmers, I have to talk about this palette because, oh my goodness, I will card above a video for you where I'm diving into this palette for the first time. It was a little unboxing video after a long day at homeschool group, and I was just super excited to play with this palette. And when I laid this shimmer on my eyelid, I was stunned, speechless for a moment, like, wow. It is an amazing shimmer. And again, compared to the Do Not Disturb palette, like, this is a world apart. This is also a very, very beautiful shimmer. It's not quite as multi-chromatic as this middle one here, but they're both amazing. But aside from the shimmers, the mattes in here are fantastic. They are super pigmented, super deep and buildable. They give you so much color payoff in just a little tap into the pan. I have zero complaints about this palette. I love the harvesty tones. Of course, the color story appeals to me as well, but the way that it's done and the quality that is represented in here is out of this world. It's phenomenal. And of course, the packaging. I mean, the packaging is the winner. It's so stinking cute with these buttery, honey, caramel sorts of colored tones and the little 3D bee whose wings move up and down. It's very, very well done. Back to the disappointing palettes, I do want to talk about Sapphire from, again, BH Cosmetics. The Sapphire palette was their September Birthstone palette, and the palette itself was quite nice. It was a really cute little 6-pan eyeshadow palette, basically, and the quality was excellent. It was good BH quality, and the color story was really pretty too. The reason I decluttered this palette was because it ended up not being the best color story for my skin tones. I have blue undertones in my skin. This palette looks amazing on people who have more yellowy undertones or golden undertones, but on me, no matter what I did, I ended up looking kind of weary and tired, very drawn. I will say, since I used that palette, I've learned a lot about eyeshadow application. I've learned a lot about what works for me, for my face shape, my eye shape, my colors, my preferences. I've learned a lot. So maybe if I were to dip back into that palette, I would have better results overall based on applying it in different ways. However, at the end of the day, the colors are the colors, and I still think that those colors were just not the best on me. But on the positive side of things, let's talk about Wilderness from Beauty Bay. I grabbed this palette on one of their relaunches. I know because it had gone out of stock right away and then it was sold out again. This is an amazing palette. One of my favorite, again, in my whole collection, not just in this year, although most of my collection is stuff I've acquired this year, so you see how it goes. But this is an amazing palette. I have talked about this so many times. These blues up here, if we're contrasting them to the Sapphire palette, these are better for my skin tone because we have a beautiful deep blue, but it's a little bit more of a true blue, a little bit more navy, with less of the, I don't know, I'm not sure what the undertones were in that Sapphire palette, but they just didn't quite work for me. And then we have this shimmer over here, which again is a lovely blue shimmer, but it's not too dark, and it has some silver in it, and I look good in silver. And then over here we have a beautiful Caribbean blue, which really brightens up my eyes. I look good in blues, but I have to use them wisely and carefully. I have to use the right tones. This palette also offers an amazing assortment of teals and greens and mustards and browns and oranges and reds, and it has so much variety. The only thing I don't like about this palette is the snow shade up here, which I really wish that it had been a crisp white matte, but it's not. It's more of an ivory sort of matte. It's good if you want to mix it with something else to get more of a pastel version, and it's good for blending out a darker tone. If you don't have a translucent face powder or you don't have a neutral, you can use that snow shade to blend out a rough edge or something. So it's not a total waste. It's just not very exciting either. I think a white matte would have been a lot prettier. This is an amazing palette. One of my favorites overall, and definitely one of my favorites that I've tried this year. For these last two palettes, I'm going to touch on two brands that I've already mentioned. They're coming back in the running here. The first one is Ace Beauté. I have the Violet Sage palette. When this was launched, I was quite excited about the color story. This is their new formula. It was released after they reformulated, and when I saw the color story, I thought, yes, here we go. This is pretty. Some purple, some green, some pink, couple deepening tones, couple light tones, some mid-tones. everything about this is right, except I wish one of these shimmers were either a purple shimmer or a green shimmer. I don't see the point in having two light toned pink shimmers. I don't know why, but anyway, I was excited about this color story. It was released, I think, first as part of BoxyCharm or Ipsy or something like that, but then eventually you might have been able to get it on their website. I don't recall exactly. But because it was part of subscription boxes, it did end up flooding the secondhand market, and I grabbed this for like $8. I really like the color story. I think it's very pretty, but again, when I've used this palette, and this is the new formula, I have not been impressed. I did not think that it was terribly good. I've used the green side of things. I've used the purple and burgundy side of things. I think I've hit pretty much every shadow in the palette in just 2 looks because I use 4 or 5 shadows at a time. And the looks were just kind of dull. Honestly, one of them was an Instagram reel. And then the other one was actually a YouTube video, which I can card above for you if you want to see. That's the one where I used the more green tones. And I don't know, I just didn't like it that much. And it does make me a little bit leery to try Ace Beauté and their new releases because I've since tried 2 palettes in their new formula and I haven't been very impressed with them. And I'm kind of like, I mean, everyone's raving, but personal experience is, I don't know. It's making me a bit nervous. But we're going to end on a bang. Here is the Merry Christmas palette from Oden. Again, this is the palette that I used for today's eye look, which again, linked below in the description box. I've been using this palette all week to make a week of video, and it is amazing. Fantastic, fabulous palette. I can't rave about this enough. I love the color story, I love the packaging, but above all, I love the formula and the quality of the shadows. The mattes are pigmented, they're blendable, they're buildable. You can put a light matte on top of a dark to blend it out, and it's no problem at all. You can put a dark matte on top of a light or a medium and deepen it up, and it's no problem at all. The shimmers are beautiful. They all have their own unique angle and shade. There's nothing in here that's a dupe or even close, really. There's nothing in here that's boring, even the most boring neutral tone, this one here, gingerbread. I was talking to a friend who has a lot of neutrals, and she goes, that gingerbread shade is special. And I personally don't know why, because I have very little neutrals, but she knows why, and she said the gingerbread shade was great, so I trust her. Here's the multi-chrome in this palette. It is a green, peachy, gold, yellow, pink sort of shift. It's beautiful. You can go neutral, you can go dark, you can go light, you can go colorful. This palette makes me smile. And that is the rest of my video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it wasn't super long, but I'm trying to get some pre-filming in as I, get ready to pack up the house to move and get ready to have a baby and work within my daughter's nap schedule and my other daughter's school schedule. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see lots more content. Don't forget to hit the notification bell because I am uploading several videos every week. And until I see you guys again quite soon, I hope you have a great day. Bye!